Before I start this rant, I want to tell you guys that I do not own this cover. This title card is not owned by me. It's by the people who made this episode. So enjoy the rant. Hi guys, this is FrayYoutube584, and in this video, I will rant on the worst episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. I like SpongeBob, but there are some horrible episodes out there, and this one is the absolute worst. I'm not even kidding when I say that on May 23rd, 2018, I watched this episode and I threw a huge tantrum that made me get sent to bed early as a punishment. That's how angry it made me. This episode had a bad start because SpongeBob is worrying about Gary when he's been home alone for a long time and nothing bad happened. He should know by now that Gary clearly enjoys being home alone. The first couple of minutes is just that. It's dull and boring. But then, when SpongeBob goes to a shop to get a new pet after work, the lady warns SpongeBob that the pet is dangerous, and he ignores her. To make it worse, SpongeBob steals it. Then the pet keeps making a terrifying, bone-chilling facial expression while roaring at Gary. This is SpongeBob, not a horror movie. And Gary did absolutely nothing wrong to deserve it. What does SpongeBob do when Puppy Fluffy is roaring and making a petrifying face? Absolutely nothing! He ignores it. He said to Gary to stop ignoring Puppy Fluffy when that pet was being a monster. Now that's infuriating. And Gary keeps getting tortured when he did nothing wrong. Now that's abysmal writing. Writers, what were you thinking? That SpongeBob puts Puffy Fluffy in bed with Gary because SpongeBob is somehow so stupid that he can't tell how dangerous the pet is. Then in the middle of the night, Puffy Fluffy gets out of bed, Gary the snail slithers out, and the pet turns into a terrifying, bone-chilling, gigantic monster, and he destroys the house while trying to kill Gary for no reason. How dare you, writers, make a precious innocent snail have to get tortured by a huge monster? It's so horrifying. I can't believe this episode is rated TVY7. It should have been rated TVMA. But this episode becomes much worse when SpongeBob wakes up. He sees the house got destroyed, and he says, "Who could have done this? No one could have done it except for Gary." Excuse me? Puppy Fluffy was also there, you idiot. And I could feel my blood boiling from anger at that moment. Then, SpongeBob walked into a room and sees Puppy Fluffy trapping Gary in his enormous mouth. Then comes the absolute worst part of the whole episode. SpongeBob sees Gary in Puppy Fluffy's mouth, and SpongeBob says, "Gary, you put Puppy Fluffy down now." Are you serious? Has SpongeBob lost his mind? That hideous monster trying to eat your snail right in front of you, and you still scold the snail? Ah! Sorry for yelling. I'm just so angry. Then Gary saves SpongeBob's life by tying a rope around Puppy Fluffy to make him run out of the house. Then SpongeBob says to Gary, "What do you have to say for yourself?" At that point, I'm not even kidding when I say this, I was throwing my remote at the TV, screaming at the top of my lungs, punching my bed, and stomping my foot as hard as I can. I got into so much trouble for doing that. Like I said, it was on May 23rd, 2018. That was a horrible day. And then the episode ends with Gary being taken to the Krusty Krab, instead of SpongeBob realizing Gary is okay at home, which should have been beyond obvious to that yellow buffoon at that point. In conclusion, this episode had zero good things about it. It was so terrible that it makes my second least favorite episode, which is One Course Meal, seem like a wonderful episode. How in the world could anyone like this? I guess I respect your opinion if you like A Pal for Gary, but I still don't understand how you could enjoy it. So forget this episode. Band Geeks is infinity times better. End of rant.